Hi, this is Kaitlin. I work on metrics in CF for K8s, and I'm here to talk about how to get Prometheus up and running in your CF for K8s cluster. This talk will include a little background on why we chose Prometheus, how to use our current solution, how we got here, and finally what's to come. First off, why are metrics so important? Site reliability engineering is focused on tracking an app's reliability through its metrics, or service level indicators. These are the markers that can be measured in relation to a threshold, or service level objective. An example of a key SLI is request latency. In this example, you can see that the agreement is that the request takes less than 300 milliseconds. At 300 milliseconds, people are getting paid to check it out, but the goal is to have it below 200 milliseconds. So these are the sorts of things you're tracking with Prometheus. Now, why Prometheus? Created in SoundCloud in 2012, Prometheus is now a standalone project hosted by the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It is considered to be the go-to choice for monitoring in Kubernetes because of its flexible data model, powerful querying language, pull metrics model with the ability to do push metrics, easy metrics exposition and service discovery, and scalability because of autonomous single service nodes. Here's a teaser of what we built, more to come on this. This code is not yet integrated into the CF for K8s codebase. Before I talk about how to use CF K8s Prometheus, I want to talk about our goals for the first release. Since CF for K8s uses YTT and CAP for templating and deploying, our goal was to make our Prometheus instance plug into the existing YTT command. We also needed to deploy our own Ubuntu-based image. We wanted to get as many CF for K8s components as possible scrapable in V1. We wanted app developers to have their custom app metrics scrapable. We wanted our Prometheus requests to be secure. So how'd we do? It's worth noting that app developers can currently CF push their apps with metrics pretty easily, but they can't view them yet unless they have kubectl access. And unfortunately, we spent the majority of our efforts trying to make secure scraping work in the changing landscape of CF for K8s networking, but in the 25th hour, we had to scrap secure scraping because of a bug in Istio that breaks Prometheus TLS requests. Let's talk about how to get component metrics scraped by Prometheus. The example here is for a CF for K8s component called metrics proxy. This is one that we built, and it provides app metrics in the response to a CF push or CF app command. We've exposed an endpoint /metrics on port 9090 that we want Prometheus to scrape. When we deploy this, Istio will actually change the path and port and display metrics from both our container and Istio's container at the new location. Once the component annotations have been vendored into the CF for K8s config directory, you can deploy both those changes and Prometheus together. At the top, you can see the CF for K8s deploy step that runs YTT, and at the bottom, you'll see how we have to modify that. You'll currently need to clone our repo and include our config directory as part of that step. Moving on to custom app metrics. If you've already defined them to have Prometheus scrape them, you'll need to add the same annotations as you would for components to your manifest file. Then CF push. Note that you'll need to be using CF7 instead of CF6 for these annotations to be picked up properly. The code on the right is in another repo that we made that has an example of how to include custom app metrics. It's called CF for K8s metrics examples. After you've deployed, make sure your metrics are being emitted correctly to be picked up by Prometheus. Then port forward Prometheus itself so you can check out its UI in your browser. Here, for demo purposes, you see that we have a CF push app called Go App with Metrics. If you look at that code, all it's doing is incrementing a count every second, so it's a really simple app just for demo purposes. The CF app command will hit our component called metric proxy to get the CPU and memory of the pod it's on. Note that it's showing 0 for disk usage. This metric is not accurate because K8s doesn't report it the same way Bosch did. Now let's look at both the component and app metrics in Prometheus. Here we're looking up the metric by its name, and we see this linear line is tracking that count as it increments. So this is for the custom app metric. And over here, we're querying for one of the metrics we expect for metric proxy. In the graph, there's a jump up at 20 shortly after we made that CF app call because a request was made to our component. Now I'm going to talk a little about what challenges and considerations we've faced thus far in developing Prometheus on CF for K8s. If you're not familiar with these tools, Helm is a package manager for Kubernetes. YTT, as mentioned before, is a templating tool. Network policies are a K8s construct that specify how a body can communicate across network entities, and Istio is a service mesh. First, we wanted to make sure Helm was usable for customers who wanted to use it. Because we wanted to have Istio sidecar injection in all pods, we deployed it in the CF system namespace so the namespace would take care of sidecar injection for us. Next, we made our own Prometheus deployment that deployed our own Docker image. That read Prometheus's code. This was very straightforward using the helm templating command and worked with YTT templating. Next, the networking team in CF for K8s tightened up security by adding network policies. This change required that every pod needed an explicit network policy in place to allow pod traffic to and/or from any other pod. This could be defined at the pod or namespace level. So we added a network policy that allowed Prometheus to scrape both the CF workloads and CF system namespaces, and more for them to accept those scrapes. Next, we found we could no longer leverage our namespace injecting sidecars for us, and had to manually add our custom Istio sidecar that would create certs and mount them in all pods that needed to be scraped via TLS. This was to make secure scraping work. Istio 1.7.1 introduced metrics merging, in which the Envoy sidecar would merge Istio's metrics with the app's metrics and display them at a new path import. We thought we had a workaround to make TLS requests work here, but then we discovered a bug that I mentioned in a previous slide, and we ultimately had to revert secure scraping in our repo. We're hoping to re-implement it when a patch comes out in Istio with the fix. Finally, what's to come? We want to get our code into CF for K8s so it's official, out-of-the-box part of CF for K8s. We want to get secure scraping to actually work, and to get the remaining components to annotate their pods for metric scraping. We want to get the Prometheus push gateway also deployable via YTT, so apps that cannot be scraped like short-running processes can still be seen in Prometheus. We want to get Grafana integrated with our out-of-the-box solution, and finally, we don't know yet, so we're hoping there's some more exciting things to work on in the future too. Once again, come find us at CF K8s Prometheus or in Slack. This is very much still in development, so don't expect what you see there today to be there tomorrow. We love feedback and PRs. We hope to hear from you.
Hello, I think I'm live now. So I'm guessing you couldn't hear anything I was saying before this. So I'll just summarize the questions that have come in so far. The first one was about publishing the slides. I can look into that after this call, and I'll share them in our channel in Cloud Foundry Slack. I thought they should have been published, so I'm not sure what happened. The second one is, are there any plans to make the metrics available to the tenants who own the apps in some way? I'm not entirely sure what the tenants is referring to. If we're talking about app developers themselves, the answer that I have for now is yes. It depends when and how depends on network implementation. So it's not something that I could answer or that my team, I think, could answer for the short term. But yes, definitely in some capacity. We haven't talked about it as a team in a few months because everything was kind of paused for the first release and the implementation of details that networking was doing. So I would have to talk to some people on my team and get back to you, but I can definitely do that in Slack to just see if we have an updated timeline for you. And then the third question was about marketplace service metrics. And I don't remember talking about this as a team, but it's pretty interesting. And Guillaume, sorry if I mispronounced your name, Guillaume, posted a link to a GitHub issue that I sort of skimmed And I will talk to my team about this as well and put an answer in Slack for that. And let's see, we're on the Q&A. Okay. Well, in our chat box. Okay. Sorry, I see Andy followed up. Clarifying our use case, we run a multi-tenant cloud foundry, and we often think about how the different tenants would get metrics out. Got it. Yeah, this is a good question for networking. But I think stay tuned, and it is important that our team has a finger on the pulse of this as well. So I would keep looking at our channel, and I'll certainly follow up right after this today about this in our channel. But yeah, we should start publishing like some plans on how we want to implement this eventually. This is our channel in Slack. While I'm waiting for more questions, I'll go try and figure out what's up with the slides. One more thing to mention for anyone who's interested is that it's so our Prometheus scrape requests are not secure, as I mentioned in the video. And what that actually means, because I had to learn about this myself, was that they are not encrypted and authenticated. So there still are some security restrictions in place because of network policies. So it's not like every metrics endpoint is totally accessible or Prometheus is able to totally access everything. The network policies are still fairly restrictive. So it's not like there's no security whatsoever, or they're completely insecure. That's a really good question that I don't know. Okay, sorry. There's another question from Graham. Follow up on access control for metrics. Would the CAPI user identity be used as principal? What component would be responsible for auth to metrics? Metric server and CF or VMs was playing this role. Is it still in discussion as it was answered? That is a really good question that I also don't know the answer to. We did not talk about that for GA. So that's another one to look for follow-up on in our channel. I apologize. I haven't been on this team for a long time, and kind of the chaos of the pandemic pushed some of the strategic conversations far back in my memory because they were happening like back in, I don't know, February, March. But now that we have our first release done, I'm guessing these will come to the forefront again. Okay, if there aren't any other questions right now, please come visit us in our channel to see some of the answers to these, and hopefully you all can give us some feedback on CF K8s Prometheus. Thanks. Have a good rest of your day or night.